Welcome to the 359. I'm Ben Fox Rubin.
I'm Scott Stein.
Today, we're going to talk all about mixed reality headsets and the Microsoft HoloLens 2, which Scott got to check out in Microsoft's headquarters in Washington. Starting off, the new headset is $3,500.
Yes.
It's expected to come out later this year. Yes, that is a lot. And it's targeted toward business customers, not consumers.
That's a thing.
So in that regard, why is it important for consumers to know about it?
Well, I don't think it's important for consumers to know about it. I think it's important for readers who follow tech to know about it. I think exactly. Know that this is not something you're going to buy, and Microsoft's not even trying to fit that role. But it is showing where all connected things are beginning to digitally merge. It sounds kind of vague, but basically AR is just as much about things connecting and going into the cloud. Microsoft is a believer in that. AR is essentially that, where you add sensors. And so in that sense, it's interesting. We're going to start seeing a lot more on phones, and HoloLens 2 does work with Android and iOS, or it's going to down the line.
What was it like using it?
So I've used all the big AR headsets, and it feels a lot more comfortable than HoloLens. I think it feels more comfortable than Magic Leap. I think its biggest differences are that it has eye tracking that feels very fast and responsive. The first HoloLens didn't have it. Magic Leap has eye tracking that's not implemented in everything.
Hey, explain that to me. Eye
so
tracking.
It actually notices where you're looking, and it can, if you start flitting your eyes around, you'll be able to see a cursor, if it's included, to show like, oh, I'm looking at this button. And not only that, but it can also do iris authentication for Windows Hello login. So, which Microsoft says is the most secure way. So, being able to get your experience on a headset, using that for logging in and for security, I laugh at it because security is a lot of big questions. It's not just about logging in; it's a question of where the data is being stored, and in the long run, how much is being tracked about you. Because Microsoft also says that this can sense emotions through your eyes.
Weird.
It also has hand tracking, so you're not using a controller, and that feels nice, but it also doesn't give vibrational or haptic feedback.
But okay,
that's kind of a big question.
Let's step back for a second and answer the question. What do you do with it? It's $3,500. Like, What were the demos? Like, what is this supposed to be used for?
Well, Microsoft demos were all really technical in the sense that they were just showing like, here is that it works, or here it is that here's eye tracking, or this is what it's like to pick up something. This is what it's like to collaborate with 3 people and see somebody standing on a virtual hill. Nothing. And there was one demo that was probably the most practical, which was about how to work in a shop where there was a real ATV or a model of, they set up this tool shop with real objects, and I was guided around with a new app called Guides that I got to. They pointed with a 3D arrow, go pick up this wrench. Now come over here. It was like a 3D Lego experience, and now I'm learning step by step how to do it, or it feels like turn by turn maps for the real world.
Was it easy to follow? Like you felt like this was the most like a really applicable use of like teaching you how to do something or to fix a machine?
It is interesting to follow. I found it was easy, except sometimes the arrows didn't seem to exactly line up and point. And my question was, if you make essentially the wrong turn, like on a map, if I pick up the wrong wrench, how quick is it to correct?
Yeah.
And right now it doesn't sound like there's a clear plan in place for that, or they're looking at that. But I think that's a really big workplace question. Also, how much you absorb the information, because I kind of blank out on turn by turn. How much does it change what it means to be in a workplace where you're getting that direct
where you're actually
guidance?
getting training? That's interesting, as opposed to just going on autopilot and letting the machine tell you.
There's a big question
do this,
with that.
do this.
Yeah. So that's a knowledge absorption question, which again Microsoft is sort of it sounds like from talking to them looking into, but there are no clear answers yet.
So let's also bring Magic Leap into this conversation. What's interesting about Magic Leap, and you've also got to test that out, that's really trying to focus on entertainment, right? Whether it's gaming or experiences.
It is.
This is totally different than what we're talking about, where this is like a business environment.
Yeah, Microsoft is connecting through all of their cloud apps and Windows 10 and really wants us to be connected in Azure to be a useful device. Magic Leap has no answers for that and is trying to look really at artists and creative experiences. Challenge there is that's still a $2,000+ headset, doesn't work with glasses. But I appreciate that they're taking wild creative ideas. I think they are the id, Microsoft's the egos right now, and they're sort of, between the two, you got to fuse. Magic Leap, their graphics might actually be better based on the chip inside, but I think it's a little clunkier to put on. although the HoloLens 2 headset is larger and more expensive. So no one's really cracked the answer to this yet. But you can see that they're kind of working on parallel...
Two different elements.
Yeah, kind of parallel paths in some way. Plus, if you want to get really deep in the weeds, Qualcomm announced that there are these USB-C plug-in AR/VR headsets that look like glasses that'll work with 5G Qualcomm phones.
Good grief.
Yeah, so, who's using that? But those could drop the price, end up with things that you put on almost like headphones that the phone does all the powering for. If that really is the case, then maybe like what Magic Leap has with the tethered pack, that becomes your phone. The headset gets less expensive. Maybe it's more like that for something that an everyday person would use, I say in quotes. But we have to see who would use this and why. That's exactly it. Microsoft is field workers, people who have their hands otherwise occupied. There's also a question of the military contract. So all of those things and high-end industrial use.
All right, we're going to have to call it for now, but really interesting stuff. If you want to read more about these stories, check us out on CNET. I'm Ben Fox-Rubin.
I'm Scott Stein.
Thanks for listening.
And thanks, everybody, for joining us for the recording of the audio podcast. You can subscribe to that using the links in the description below. Sorry about the ruckus right in the beginning.
Yeah, what was that?
My brand new Ghostbusters action figure that I had propped up on my monitor must have gotten shaked off by your gravelly, low, rumbling voice.
Hello, it's Ben.
It crashed right into my lighting board. Luckily, nothing worse happened. But anyways.
I thought you fell off of your chair.
Not yet.
I thought you were painting a wall and then you fell from a ladder.
Painting a wall. Anyways, go ahead and send in your comments and questions, and we can talk some more about the HoloLens or Magic Leap or anything in the AR/VR world right now, since we got Scott for the next 20 or so minutes, whether he likes it or not. Srinjoy is coming right out the gate with guns blazing. He says, I heard that Microsoft's new OS codenamed Santorini, which might rival Chrome OS, is also going to power their devices starting from the HoloLens. Any word on that?
No, that's a good question. No, I don't have word on it. And, to be clear, too, this is a one-day, so big visit that I got to do to Redmond, where I got to talk to Microsoft executives and designers. But it was a very organized field trip where we didn't get into a lot more beyond HoloLens design. And so that's a good question. I mean, I think that Microsoft's ambition is to be increasingly cloud-based, so that wouldn't surprise me. And down the road for HoloLens, at least, the idea is to push more and more through the cloud and less on the device, so that eventually maybe these with 5G would become, like we talk about with a lot of things, basically cloud devices with like a very lightweight terminal element, but TBD on how that would work in a reliable way.
Related to the consumer element of this, by the way, I think Ian Schur, in his story about the HoloLens 2, he was on the field trip with you.
Yes, we both did it together along with Gabriel Sama for CNET Espanol. So three of us got to use it together, which was great.
So Ian was talking about the idea that, okay, the HoloLens 2, not for consumers, but maybe the HoloLens 3 or whatever they call the HoloLens 3 might be.
Well,
did you get that impression?
I did. So you have to read that not that way. But I think, no, the HoloLens 3 will not be for consumers, according to Alex Kipman. I think at some point there will be a version for consumers. But Alex Kipman, who's the creator of HoloLens and the Microsoft Kinect, when we talked to him for a good 20 minutes, where there'll be a story on that coming up, he didn't even want to predict beyond 5 years. So very keeping the cards close, but said that the HoloLens 2 is a 1 to 2 year, for now, industrial use case. So it is TBD on HoloLens 3, but I still got the sense that that's not going to be for consumers either, because they need to work out so many problems. He basically said, I think he did say in the interview, that that next version also will not be for consumers.
Oh, it's very hard to justify that price point for consumers. Everybody's
battery,
everybody's
software.
already freaking out about these foldable phones and how expensive they are.
Right.
You're going to start pushing into a $3,500, augmented reality or mixed reality thing. I hope it does the dishes. That's what I hope.
What, through Azure? Through
Just something.
through...
Just to help me more with my life.
It might connect to
help
the thing
me
that
get
does
through
the
my
dishes.
life a little bit more,
Yeah.
Or while I'm doing the dishes, it gamifies it somehow. I'm strangling monsters.
Gives you directions.
Or gives you directions.
Nintendo rewards.
How to clean the
buzzes
pots.
you. Checks your EEG, your brain status. So that's the question there. There are a few things that are missing. I know this is one of the questions, but a few things missing: haptics and also I think even an even larger field of view. But go ahead, more questions too, because I don't want to keep talking.
Well, Sinjoy is here to grill you today, Scott. He's quoting you as Jet Scott mentioned, quote, no clear answers from Microsoft, unquote. Is this related to the cloud around them regarding the military program ruckus?
Good question.
Wait. So the question was no clear answers on the military program and no clear answers on the cloud, or
he's
what?
asking what your reference in stating no clear answers from Microsoft, is that in regards to the military program?
Oh, well, we asked them about the military program. I mean, they didn't go into great detail or any detail really on it because, and it's in the interview which we're going to be putting up. They said, when we said, did you show the HoloLens 2 to the military? Alex Kidman said, no, we showed them HoloLens 3, which
is already
almost
a product.
sounded like a half joke, but I don't think is a joke. And so, but you also got to think that because similar to what Magic Leap had claimed that they've already shown the next version of Magic Leap 2, I think they're allowing people who really are investing in this to look at the whole time frame, not just the current product.
Mm-hmm.
But so my thing about the military is that I don't know. I'm not a military tech specialist. I still have a lot of questions, even for that, on how mission critical a device like this is. It's not 5G. It's not meant to be cellular connected.
Well, it's meant for training.
For training, not in the field.
So
I
what
would,
I know,
I would not think, because it's not even mil-spec tested yet for that type of durability.
which might be what the HoloLens 3 is
That
to
might
a certain
be it.
extent.
I also wonder about things like it does eye tracking. You have hands. How free are your hands? Also, how good is the voice? And also haptics. I mean, haptics is something that for military and for other purposes, vibration feedback.
You get a real feedback. Yeah.
Yeah,
You get a real feel for something.
I think that's a tremendously important thing, not just to get a tactile sense of what you're touching, but to get a spidey sense of what's going on in the world around you that you can't see. So, I mean, it's kind of like rumble in a video game or like a buzz on your wrist or the watch. I think that's an important sense. Alex Kidman was talking a lot about the great importance haptics has for Microsoft, and yet there is no physical controller and no haptics on HoloLens. So there's definitely a TBD going on with that.
What I do find interesting about this, and Srinjoy, definitely thanks for the question, is that Microsoft has taken a very different posture related to facial recognition. They've come out with multiple blog posts saying, look, we're not going to sell this to authorities. We're not going to provide our facial recognition software to, law enforcement. We're also asking legislators to step in and actually legislate and create laws around facial recognition before we actually start moving forward with this. This is all happening at the same time that I believe we have a story out today that there are some Microsoft employees that are calling for Microsoft to stop working with the military related to HoloLens.
Which ran alongside, they put that out at the same time the announcement at Mobile World Congress, or right in advance of it.
I think it's pretty justified to say that the arguments here are very different, where, law enforcement could potentially be using facial recognition to make arrests.
Yes.
Whereas with HoloLens, this is more of a back-end function, I would assume, for training purposes only. So this is obviously, from a factual perspective, these are different usages.
Yeah, I mean, for flight simulators already, Lockheed Martin, they use eye tracking for VR training. A lot of this stuff, I mean, I talked with Toby, who makes enterprise-based eye tracking. This stuff's already in play for a long time about looking at the ability to look at heat maps from where your eyes are moving. I mean, the difference between knowing where your head is turning versus what your eyes are particularly looking at does approach almost like a mind reading element.
So it's interesting.
For any training purposes, military, otherwise, attention span.
You're saying Lockheed Martin already provides some sort of eye tracking type of technology? Is that right?
There's a flight simulator software program that's already being used. I used it too at using HT Vive Pro Eye at CES. They had a little setup just to see what that looked like, and it's basically to see. There isn't a lot to do for you, the user, but it then allows somebody else to look at, what panels was he looking at? What was he paying attention to?
So the big difference there, though, So that's very interesting. I didn't know about that. The
Yeah.
big difference there is that Lockheed Martin is already a military contractor, whereas Microsoft, they're still very much known as a consumer brand. And we've seen very clearly that these consumer brands bleeding into getting military contracts or major government contracts.
Yeah.
A lot of like certain consumers find unpalatable.
Yeah,
You know, I
and
see
people
that from
working for
covering
the-
Amazon.
and people working for the company that like think, oh, well, this is not what I thought I'd be involved in, or the company I'd be
Jeff
involved in.
Bezos, Amazon CEO, has taken a very different perspective on this. He said, look, I think the government should have the latest and greatest from major tech companies. You know, it's like saying, I love this country. I want to make sure that, you know, it's well defended, that the DoD has all the best tools at their disposal. I'd be curious to see what Microsoft's perspective is on that related to HoloLens, because obviously related to facial recognition, they've taken a much different perspective.
Well, they did not say anything more on it, and they didn't have any more to comment. We're interested in knowing more, so
It's
we said
obviously
that.
a sensitive subject.
Yeah, there is, and that letter hadn't even run. I visited Redmond. We got to visit January 31st. It's a long time ago. So it was an early prototype of HoloLens too. They were even saying like, you know, it's not in its final form, basically, to like, you know, in terms of the holographic experiences to be forgiving, but we reported on the fact that it glitched out at times. But so even then, they certainly weren't talking about it. It was before the letter ran. So we didn't even get to ask about that, but we asked in follow-ups.
Let's get to more questions.
Yeah.
But either way, Srinjoy, thanks again for that great question, and you know, definitely sparked some interesting conversation on our side.
Yeah.
As always. Hey, so you said that you demoed with Gabriel and Ian, but were you implying that you had a multi-player, multi-user experience with them, or were you each individually trying different programs?
Yeah, so I'll tell you exactly what we did. There were 3 different demos, only one of which we were able to put on video. And we didn't get any direct feed, although you can see in the video, Microsoft provided, much like with Magic Leap, footage from the headset afterwards. It doesn't show the field of view, but shows exactly the way the experience looks and was from the HoloLens. So I got to do what was called the shell demo. We each got to run through that, which was in a living room, which is the one you see in the video, where I'm picking up objects and stretching them, and then using my eyes to look at things and control them with my voice and scroll. The second demo was downstairs in a basement, which is where I think the first HoloLens demos ever were given in 2015. And I just dropped my phone. And then
Only in mixed reality you did.
Right. So that was actually like a set design. It's a shame we couldn't record it, but it was an ATV set up on a thing. It looked like somebody's garage machine shop.
And that's where you were fixing.
And that was specifically coded and set up and scripted to work with this headset and something called Dynamics 365 Guides. That's like a 3D PowerPoint. It's for anyone to create turn by turn, and you know, you could stand in a room and draw your paths and map it to something, and they wanted to show that would work. Each of us individually did that. The third demo was the 3 of us in a room, which again would have been a cool video. No one was able to record. That we all stood around a table like that Davos picture with like the glowing sphere, you know, like we're all like in this circle with HoloLenses watching a table with like, it was like the Death Star hologram, except it was Microsoft's campus designs.
And you were all able to see it at the same time.
Yeah. So last year, Google showed multiplayer AR with cloud anchors at Google I/O, which I got to see. Apple launched multiplayer or multi-user AR with ARKit 2, which we got to try at WWDC. This is similar in the sense that it's cloud anchors, that these are, which Microsoft has had, that you could pinpoint a position that everyone can read. But they just wanted to show how that is working super smoothly with 3 people all. And I looked at Ian, and over his head it says Ian, and you know, everyone's recognized by the HoloLens.
In case you didn't know,
as if I didn't know that was
standing
Ian.
next to.
And then they just had 2 other people with phones to show, oh, we're seeing the holographic things as well. So if you have
on
a
our
phone,
phones,
yeah, so that if everyone's struggling, like you said, Magic Leap talked about this and others, that how many people are going to have these headsets? Somebody is going to have to just use a phone. People won't buy the headsets.
Intern.
Right, the intern. The intern. That's exactly it. The intern gets the phone.
Sorry, the intern.
Yeah.
We're not going to trust you with the $3,500 headset.
So the idea is that for their cloud software package, they want this to work on phones as well. So they were just showing you're on your headset, but here it is on a phone. that was the demo. It was just to stand and watch this video.
I'm
and do that.
struggling with these demos. I'm struggling a little to really think, especially with the price point that they're throwing out there, that this is the most useful. This is the best possible way to do these types of things, like collaborations or whatever. If, I don't know, like a new headquarters. You're talking about the fact that it doesn't have haptics, but they're talking about adding haptics sometime later.
Yeah.
I just wonder if, you know, a Google Doc, which costs $0, or a whiteboard
Right.
are easier ways for people to collaborate and communicate together. Whereas you get 3 people with the HoloLens 2, you're talking about 10 grand.
I think it's going to be extremely limited because, like you said, it's not for collaboration on anything that you could do a million other ways. You don't need that. For a lot of people, they won't need it. I think I met with Spatial, which was the company that was on stage at Mobile World Congress, that's doing this collaborative 3D office teleconferencing type of thing where there's an avatar and you see things on the walls and you can grab stuff and search Bing or whatever, you know,
Right.
You could pull together your cloud stuff.
Could do stuff.
The point is, one of their clients is Mattel, and so they were talking about, which I think is interesting, that at least if you're hands-free, you also can use your phone, and that you start looking for using your phone as a controller, or like throwing the stuff from the phone into it, or basically it's another screen to multitask with. What's the point? Well, if you're doing a 3D object and you want to be able to, and you have the money to start modeling something in 3D and talking about it, versus you could also do that in VR.
Sure.
But here it's like, oh, you could also use your phone or your computer.
And I don't mean to sound overly skeptical because
Yeah.
I do on Sunday
And we
I
haven't seen any
went on
software that's really proven all that stuff yet.
Sure, but I went on CNET's homepage on Sunday, and right next to your HoloLens 2 story was the Huawei Mate X story about a foldable phone. And these are concepts that we've been talking about for years in the tech industry. Now they're finally getting commercialized. Now they're finally actually reaching consumers. They're not just concept devices. It's here.
Yeah.
We've got a price to it. We're actually going to release it. So regardless of a lot of the skepticism that I am throwing out there that I think is entirely justified, it is kind of fun, I guess is the right word, to step back and say, hey, you know, some of this cool future crap that we've been talking about for a long time is finally here. You know, let's kick it around, see what it's like. Maybe it's good, maybe it isn't, but that's the whole concept of technology. And it's pretty cool that we're at least getting to chew on some new stuff that's legitimately new.
Well, what's cool is that, and you know, everybody talks about 5G to no end, and it can seem just like a catchphrase, which in a lot of ways it is. But the idea that everybody's trying to think of ways that things connect differently and kind of break the mold of like, maybe this changes devices and how we use them. So you see people starting to throw stuff at a wall and start thinking about like, how do phones begin to transform? How do headsets begin to transform? And then once like, so interestingly enough too, you talk about HoloLens and the Mate X, these are pre-5G devices at the moment. So like when that starts folding in, do we start reconceptualizing, or who even has 5G? Like maybe it's like, is that really going to become essential, and how much is that? I don't know. So I feel like there's like a 4 or 5 year period where like everyone's going to keep breaking and remolding the stuff until it fits the new form.
And arguably some of this stuff might fizzle, but it's new and it's interesting for sure.
Yeah.
And by the way, the Mate X, if you don't know what it is, and
It's
I didn't
beautiful
mention
looking.
it, it's a foldable phone from Huawei. It's probably not going to reach the United States, and it's $2,600. So there you go. Anyway,
The HoloLens 2 is still more expensive.
Yes,
But not
they're
by
all
a
really
tremendous.
expensive.
It's everything's above $2,000, and we haven't. You know, there's still a lot more to come in terms of like how those function. I'm super curious about folding phones. I have not held or used any of those. The Fold, the Mate X. I'm not.
Jessica
in Barcelona.
Dolcourt, who's one of our very experienced phone reviewers, she tried out the Mate X at MWC in Barcelona, and she was actually wowed.
It looks
She's like,
fantastic.
I'm not wowed by a lot of phones.
Yeah.
This like wowed me. So that's really interesting.
It's very beautiful. It looks even more futuristic than the Fold to me. Like when they showed how
And the
just kind of-
Samsung Fold,
the Samsung Fold, which already looks futuristic. I think like everybody's asking or questioning not just price, but how do the screens work? How durable are they? Also, the software. It's just like smartwatches or any other thing. You got new tech that comes out.
What are you going to do with it?
What are you going to do with it? How does that software work with Android in a way that is not weird and annoying and works well with the things you want to do? So I'm super curious. I think it's exciting to be thinking about this. And it's cool to have the concept cars. Basically, they're not there for you to necessarily buy, but they are there to, you could, like in April, you could go for it. And
you could get the Galaxy Fold.
You could drive the concept car.
This is that's a great selling point right there.
Yeah.
You should sit at like a Galaxy or whatever, like at the little Samsung area at Best Buy and be like, you could go for it. You could be that guy.
You want to be that guy?
What's stopping you?
You want the hovercraft?
Buy this timeshare. Buy the timeshare. Yeah. You deserve it.
That some guy who's like got a fedora.
Which why not you? You should buy a $2,000 phone.
I think not a lot of people. I think a fair number of people in the tech landscape are obviously going to do that to begin to explore these things.
Oh, sure.
See. But yeah, you're buying a concept. You're saying like I'm the first on the block with the crazy.
There will be people like that. Anyway, I do want to get to some more questions, so let's jump to that.
I want to be the guy.
You can be the guy.
You can buy your way in. You can be the guy.
Sign your name on this dot.
Okay,
Brian.
so Scott, we're seeing a lot of early concepts of how the functionality of the HoloLens 2 is really going to come into play. It's you say outright in your article, this isn't for the average consumer.
Right.
A lot of the demonstrated aspects of it were used in things like medical or mechanical engineering. What would you say was the most endearing application you witnessed, whether it be currently active or maybe still like early in development but forthcoming?
That's a very good question. I don't really know if I've seen an amazing application for it. I think medical is super interesting. I have a lot of questions about, if somebody's working in an operating room or you're using this and for training, that's one thing. But if you're really talking about
the arrows like
holding a scalpel and you're kind of doing the thing, I just got to got to bring up the visualization.
Yeah. I know how to do this surgery. Let me just put on my HoloLens too to make sure that I do it correctly.
There's a lot of questions. By the way, so I talk about hands, but I am really interested in eye tracking because it could potentially be a whole new level of controlling things without hands. The demo I did was super smooth for that, and the tech I'm seeing that does eye tracking and other products like Vario, a VR headset, and even Tobii with HTC, the Vive Pro Eye, you could potentially it almost feels like you're thinking about something and then you look at it, and if the voice commands are good enough, then you could potentially just look at something and just go like open, as long as that's a thing you really wanted. But then potentially you could analyze stuff.
Man, that is some next level laziness right there.
It is. Or if you're really seriously busy on something that you can't bother with, that's another question I asked Microsoft is like the practical, now everything is more like this. It feels like I'm really grabbing and pulling something or pushing. But over time, how much is that exhausting? How much does that feel like you're getting fatigue? In the Human Factors Lab, they're doing research on that now to begin to measure fatigue, but they don't know the answers.
It's like you're describing like George Jetson pushing a button too much at work.
Right.
Where he's like
doing the virtual...
He's like, oh, my finger pushing button is, really getting injured.
Well, it could be like a good Wii Sports. It's like, well, anytime you have, it is like video games where you had the Wii and Kinect, and at some point, how much of this are you going to want to do, and how much you just want to... Even Alex Kipman said gamers just want to press the button.
Yeah.
So that's a question here is when you're doing AR, how much are they going to realize that you don't maybe want to do this? You maybe just want to get there just by pressing something fast or say, get me that thing. You don't want to virtually grab.
Right. I mean,
necessarily
like
grab the
that's how
virtual
new
thing.
This stuff is. That's a really great point.
So there's a lot of questions.
They're still figuring that out. Yeah.
So I didn't really answer that question, but I felt like
you got.
But I'm explaining why. It. Yeah, I didn't want to drift and then say I didn't answer it. But I'd say medical, 3D design, sure, but they claim it's going to be more cloud accurate for graphics rendering. That's going to boost the amount of polygons for graphic designers because in VR you can create, but AR, it's not as graphically rich at the moment for a lot of these mobile chips. But again, to be determined. I did not see any proof of that through Azure of how the 100 million polygons or whatever versus they made this claim about 100,000 polygons versus 100. If you want to create a 3D object, so that's that's a killer app that I have not seen yet.
Okay, so we are just about out of time, but before we wrap it up, let's go ahead and slam through this last kind of three-parter here, Scott.
Yeah.
Focus. All right. So, how do I want to phrase this? How many years until we see this priced low enough that it does become consumer level?
Mm-hmm.
How many generations until it's more eyeglasses size and comfortable?
Yeah.
Which we see they're already taking steps in the right direction for.
Yes.
And lastly, how close to Minority Report are we right now?
Oh, great questions.
Start with that last one.
Okay, how close?
Go ahead. Sorry.
That's the hardest one. How close are we to Minority Report? People mention Minority Report a lot when you brief people on tech. It's still out there. Also, because the future team that worked on Minority Report, a lot of those were tech people. Spielberg pulled together a dream team. What was like Kevin Kelly and Jaron Lanier.
Which,
and
by the way, that movie was like a B+ at best. I think
gets
I'm being
better.
generous.
It gets better as you watch it, I swear. That's a whole other discussion. In fact, we had a whole podcast about that.
I think the reason I'm mentioning it is that Minority Report gets referenced as like this important touch point in tech, even though the movie itself, I would say, was merely okay. But anyway, keep going.
The Minority Report thing that's interesting to me is not, as of last year, I realized it's not the this. It's not the, I'm composing a symphony with objects.
I'm
with
really
my
enjoying
hands.
your gestures today.
Yeah. It's not that, which is also what ended up, that influenced the Kinect. And there's a lot of stuff in that decade afterwards that did that. Now, what interests me is that how much eye tracking is going to eventually become a form potentially of pre-crime. This is a real question.
Holy crap.
That has been surfaced by people who have real knowledge in this field.
You have to write about this.
I'm going to be writing about it. It's my big fascinating topic. I'd like to know more, but there are already apps that can profile neurologic conditions based on where your eyes are moving. There is progress being made to where your eyes move as a way of measuring intent or even psychological state.
What?
There's a question of whether that will be used to profile. Yeah. So, I mean, you talk about all the biometrics and all the things that Facebook or others measure, and everyone's interested in collecting more data about us to begin to get a profile.
Our eyes?
Well, this is why you have to be really careful about asking like where the data is going and what's going on. And so that's Minority Report to me, something I never thought I would think about pre-crime. 2, when are we going to see these for everyday people? Was that the first question?
Yeah, when does it become consumer level?
I have big questions for companies like Samsung and Apple who have been pretty quiet in this. How are you going to do it? Because everything I've looked at right now is super messy. Eyes are not to be messed with in your everyday use to a large extent because I need my glasses. And this also answers the other question about glasses, which I think was the second one. I love that HoloLens works with my glasses, fits over, and works fine. But it's
as a fellow glasses American,
Yeah.
I'm completely on board with what you're saying.
It's awesome. It's a space helmet. It's a RoboCop helmet, so like you're not going to go wear that.
Freeze, dirtbag.
You're not going to wear that to the cafe, but it's not meant to be. But glasses ones I've seen as well. I tried on Project North's smart glasses, which I'm going to be getting a pair of soon to test out. I've tried Vuzix Blade and other smart glasses that are pretty basic. Usually those have to get very specific prescription lenses put in, which don't even work to my prescription, which is -8. You have to buy those separately. And how many people are going to invest in that crazy amount, which right now, a lot of those are $1,000, which is a lot. And so
Doesn't seem like that anymore, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, so how is that going to move into everyday use versus just letting you slip over your glasses? I don't know. And also folding this up, how are you going to carry this in your pocket? When we talk about headphones, like getting down to AirPod size, a lot of the nice thing about AirPods or other Bluetooth headphones now too was like the shrinkage of the battery charge case. So it didn't feel like a bulge in your pocket. That's a little thing. What about a pair of glasses? If you're not wearing them all the time, what am I going to fold it up and keep that in my glasses hip pack? So these are real questions about like for everyday people. Google Glass had to deal with this problem when they tried to make prescription Google Glass glasses. And then you're like, well, who's even getting that and where and why? And companies are already interested. Luxottica had been interested. A lot of these companies, Zeiss has that optical division that's been working on lenses to incorporate that. So technologically, it's there, but I still have questions, a million, on what, like you said, what are you using that for? Is it just a smartwatch on your eye? Is it just, oh, here's the time, here's an incoming phone call? Because we're also trying to stop being bugged by notifications. And are we like hanging out with Mickey Mouse and like ghosts of our relatives?
Well,
and
I believe
interactive
this
McDonald's ads?
Was this in your story? This may have been an Ian story.
What
talking
is it
about
that we're doing?
Well, it was Alex Kipman was talking about the idea that, anytime we interact with technology, we interact with them via screens.
Yes.
So this is a way of breaking that paradigm and going to something new.
It is. And he brought up a horse and buggy thing, which I was thinking, is he totally written off that? He admitted he uses computers all the time. But yes, that we're reinventing the paradigm. Or is this stuff, I still think of it like headphones. I just want to get them to the point where they're little and are iPhones, which were that was the name before the iPhone of like the first VR headset designs. Little thing you pop in so you can visualize something, pop them out. I don't know how you design that, but I feel like it needs to be that convenient and not something you want to have all the time. But it is a big question. Or maybe we just walk around and all the things in our life essentially offer this already. Like AR doesn't need to be
on your face.
Yeah, this is the other kind of mind-blowing thought. AR doesn't need to be on your face. AR just means to enhance the world around you. So it is defined as visual, but...
So you're talking about like Star Wars holograms,
yeah,
potentially.
Or researchers have argued that AR, also can be audio, could be haptic. So like, here's a question. Is a smartwatch augmented reality already? Because it's enhancing and changing your world. Is a phone augmented reality? Even without holding it up.
It sounds like more of a philosophical argument than like something actually practical. But
is an Amazon Echo. Like, I mean, or if you had a camera that recognizes you, it is a philosophical concept, but I feel like the reason I'm getting this weird is that if your home is filled with sensors, like Microsoft has a Kinect sensor that also can do all the scanning like a little mini Kinect in your home, and more companies are exploring those types of depth mapping 3D cameras that could be in maybe all sorts of devices. Well, if they can get a depth map of your room and can know where you are in the room and can judge things and give you feedback on where you're interacting, then how much do you need a headset? Maybe the grid is all around you. It gives you nightmares. That'll be your nightmare thought tonight. What if the grid is all around you anyhow?
And it gives you like surround sound just for you
while
you're watching a movie?
Yeah, the system knows if you're close to the coffee mug, or if you need to turn off the light, or it's kind of like what Echo has awareness of you in a room, but visually, if you
might start breaking out in a sweat thinking about this horrible
The rights
idea.
about depth mapping. Well, Magic Leap and others are already trying to mesh out rooms and remember the grid of a room and the location of all the objects. And at some point, you got to think smart home is going to maybe try to aim for the same thing, where for security or for better awareness of you. I'm just waiting for that stuff to start showing up in an Echo or whatever else, and see, how much are we going to start gridding that out? Because I don't know what you can wear on your head that's not going to be annoying. Maybe it's just a headphone. It's a good question.
Hard to say.
Yeah, I don't know. Big questions that I don't.
BVG,
That's a big unraveling question.
I've got to call it, unfortunately.
Yeah, we're that. Holy crap, that was dense. We're like 10 minutes over, but great conversation.
Sorry about that.
No, Scott, we plan when you come on the show to pad in a little extra time, but we are out. Thanks everybody. That was fantastic conversation. Looking forward to more on AR and HoloLens and HoloLens 3 and whatever the hell else they come pull out of their ass. Ben, get us on out of here.
Okay, all right. To avoid pre-crimes, I'm going to do it this way today. The 359 is available on iTunes, TuneIn, FeedBurner, Google Play Music, Google Podcasts, the Amazon Echo, CNET.com. Hopefully I didn't miss any. Have a good day, everybody.
Take
See
care,
you tomorrow.
folks.